to the Fantasy Grounds Academy. This is Founder Layron, and today I'm going to go over the Pathfinder 2e Core Sound Link set. This is now available on the Fantasy Grounds store. If you haven't been around for a while, the sound has been integrated from Fantasy Grounds to the web player for Syrinscape. So what I have up here right now is the Pathfinder content. So if you want to use this particular sound set, so what I'm talking about is on the Fantasy Grounds website, it's going to require that you have a Super Siren subscription. So that means you're basically paying for the whole shebang. I think it's like $20 every 2 months. So if you just buy the individual sets, this sound link pack isn't going to do you any good. So if you're using this web player and you only buy the individual sets, the sound links that are included in the sound pack will not work because it won't link to the individual sounds the same way. It'll link through that online player. And the online player is not compatible with this type of sound pack. You'll have to actually manually link those together yourself through the interface. So just kind of giving you a heads up. And this would be a waste if you're going to buy this and you don't have a super sub and you don't have Fantasy Grounds. So you want to make sure that you have the super sub subscription from Syrinscape, and or you can use the module if you want. You don't have to buy the module, but if you want to take advantage of all the work that's already been done to it, Steve Barr, the employee and one of the guys that adapted this for the Syrinscape team, he was on a couple of weeks ago, and it's the video that he was on. We were talking about integrating Pathfinder into Fantasy Grounds, so he's delivered on that, and now the pack is available. And what it's saying here, for $10, you're getting all the attack items, triggers for like weapons. You're getting damage triggers for like ice, cold, fire, that sort of thing, death triggers, and spells. So that's the content you're getting with this particular pack. So there'll probably be more for all the different adventure paths, but for the time being, it's just the core rulebook that's covered here. So if you want anything outside of the core rulebook, you'll have to develop those links yourselves. The nice thing about it is once you have this pack, you will be able to kind of see how they did it and kind of make your own based on that. So even if you don't go out and buy every single one of these packs, as soon as you learn how it's put together and how it works, you can essentially make your own. So if you can't wait for Smiteworks and Syrinscape to adapt all the different adventure paths to the packs like this one, then you can actually do your own. So I'm not going to cover that aspect of it. That's a lot of extra time and work. I'm just going to go over the Syrinscape part of it and some of the setup so you kind of idea of what's happening. So first things first is on the Syrinscape website, you need to have an account and you need to be logged in. Once you go there, in your account area, you have a user dashboard. And from there, you can gain your authorization code so that you can put whatever it is that you need into Fantasy Grounds to authorize the link so that the Syrinscape web player will activate through Fantasy Grounds. So if I go to Fantasy Grounds, you have some things that you have some prerequisites for. So you need to have the core rulebook loaded. Okay, that's one of the requirements. The other thing is when you go into the options, make sure that the audio is enabled. By default, it is enabled, but if it's disabled, you need to re-enable that. The next step is once that's loaded and you have purchased the sound links files and you've updated the Fantasy Grounds client, then you will come into the activation part in the modules and you can search for Syrinscape or however you want to do it. So I'm just going to go to this Syrinscape. I'm just going to type it in so I can kind of narrow this down. And this is the SoundLink pack, so you need to load that. So once that's loaded, what you'll see here are all the different sound sets that are included, and these are links. They are not the actual audio. So remember that. These are sound links. The sound sets are what's built to trigger the audio online. So these are all different triggers, like the Goblin Wilhelm scream, all these sort of things. So these are what you have to have loaded in order to get these to work. The next thing is you also have to enable the Syrinscape integration. So you do that through the sound context menu up on the top right under the gear. I'm going to go ahead and put my cursor on because I know that it's kind of hard to see what I'm pointing at. So go ahead and enable that. So over here is where you enable it, and this is the sound context. And what you want to do is go to settings, and you'll have different things that you need to fill out. First, you need the Syrinscape option. You're going to click on authorization, and the authorization code will be for when you are going to grab that from the website. So make sure you grab that code, and then you will use that so that you can use it with your Syrinscape player. So that's something that you'll want to set up first. And then once you got the authorization set up, then you're going to click on Web Import and click Yes to All. And that's going to pull in all the Syrinscape sound lists for you for the packs, or in this case, the subscription that you have. Once you're done, it'll say Syrinscape sound lists imported and saved. Then the next thing is to generate a session. So when you make a new campaign, you're going to click Generate and then Yes to All. And that is going to set up a private link for you and your players so that you can play in your campaign. And then you're going to click Invite, and that's going to provide two links, one for the GM, one for the player. So when I click on the player version, it's going to bring up this player edition, essentially. And that's what you're going to want to share with your players. So when your players are online and they're playing with you, you share that link with them, and they can connect to the link and they can hear the audio that's actually triggered through Syrinscape to the players. So you don't have to pipe it through Discord or anything like, or a robot, unless you got a sophisticated setup. So this is just the first steps of getting this to work. So you got to get it set up on the Syrinscape website. You have to get it set up in Fantasy Grounds. Then you got to get it set up to where you can share the file with your players. And when they're connected to your table, they can all click on this link and it will take you to the player version. And then the other link here is for the DM control panel, which you have to be signed in to have this. And this is where you can actually manually load sounds and that sort of thing. So this is where you can load up. If you uploaded your own custom sounds or you have your own sets, this is where you would access that. And you can manually force these if you want, like manually play them through here. So this is just a way for you to kind of customize the experience if you need to. But for the most part, I just use the player part because I'm triggering everything through, or most everything through the Fantasy Grounds interface using the links that they've provided or the ones that I make myself, and it will trigger and send this to the players. So another thing you can do with this link is I'm going to hit copy, and I'm going to show you my OBS setup because I know this comes up too. So right now, what I have here is my OBS. I can set this up as a player or as a source so that I can bring in the audio. So if I click on sources and then I click on browser source, and I'm going to click add source, and this is going to be called Syrinscape, but what I'm going to do is create a new one so you can see. So I'm going to say add new source. I'm going to call this Pathfinder 2e source, because that way I kind of know what it's for. The other one's set up around D&D. But you don't have to have several different ones, but the address has to match. So I'm going to do Pathfinder 2 audio source, so I know what this is. And go ahead and hit add source. So what it does is it gives you this screen. So what I'm going to do is click on Control Audio via Streamlabs desktop. So that way I can mess with the audio. And then I'm going to put in the URL for the sound player so that I can play on my stream to whoever's watching if you're going to stream the audio. And I'm going to go ahead and close this. Here's the little dialog window that was created. So I'll just kind of shrink this down and I'll put this somewhere so we can still kind of see it. and you can share it with your stream or whatever you want to do. So I'm going to put that right here. And if you want to put a fancy frame around it or whatever, that's up to you. But I'm just going to show you just the basics. So that's how you add it as a source to OBS. So you're not having to use your desktop audio. You're going to use a direct link to Syrinscape. So this is a way that you can actually incorporate it with your stream, and you don't have to pipe it out any differently. I mean, sure, you can share your desktop audio. The problem with that is it might pick up whatever else you got going on for your personal computing. So now that that's there, I'm going to go ahead and lock it. And this is how I have my OBS set up. Okay, so this is in case you want to stream. For some people, they don't care about that. But this is just a way that you can kind of see how that works. So that just in case you need to, this is a good way to do it. So I'm going to set up some audio, and I'm going to make sure that I got everything set right. So give me one moment. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is go back to Fantasy Grounds. And once you have this all set up, you should be able to control some of the elements within the game. So in other words, if you pull up a player or some sort of creature that's attached to this book or to this core book, you should be able to pull up some of the audio, like the spells, for instance. So when I'm in the spells area, it might give me some spells that I can use to trigger. And then if I go to the actual group and go to the spells trigger, these are all the different spells that are coded in this particular set, the sound set, that will work. So let's see what happens if we can get this to work. So I'm going to hit play. And yep, there we go. Wow, it's pretty loud. Sorry about that. So that's Baleful Polymorph. So then you got another spell here. Let's just Blight. It's pretty cool. So essentially, when you have player characters that have those spells, if they cast them, it should project that audio link over to Syrinscape. It'll play through the player, and they'll hear the sounds as it comes up in the combat tracker and in the chat. So these are triggered by spells, and like I said earlier, you can set these up. And this is the guy that converted it, Steve Barr. He's from Syrinscape. And they were talking about this a couple of weeks ago about getting this incorporated into Fantasy Grounds. And then I also provided in the end of the video a tutorial on how to set this up in Fantasy Grounds. Very similar regardless of which rule set you're in. And now Pathfinder finally has at least the core book. I think it's going to take a while to get all the other books in there because the source books are very big. So it's going to take a while. I would say probably the rest of this year to really get some traction on these, because they take several weeks sometimes to do these. So this is the link on the Fantasy Grounds Atlassian that tells you how to set all this up. And if you're going to trigger audio locally, that's a whole separate setup. It's all different ball game, but that's also detailed in here. That's where you wouldn't need a Super Sirens sub. The other thing is it will teach you how to make your own sound set. So if you don't want to wait for Smiteworks and for Syrinscape to build these sound link packs for you, you can build your own using examples from that stuff that's already in here. So if you pull one of these up, you'll see how it's set up. It's set up as a trigger. If you actually unlock this, the subtype is casting. It gives you a pattern, which is based on a tone. And this is the bless spell. So these are just kind of examples. So those are spells. Then you have death triggers like instant death, dead, and dying. You have damage triggers for all the different damage types. And then you also have some other things that may come up in play that are related to the core book. So this doesn't cover the modules and all the add-ons that are out there right now, but you could essentially build your own if you use these as your template or your guide. So if you can copy the way it's set up, you can pretty much do your own thing if you want. Now, as far as how you use it and play is kind of up to you, but you would bring up that sound context menu, and as you go through an adventure, as you go through the pages, the different options for sounds will come up in the actual context of play, and you'll be able to manually trigger those. Or sometimes they're chat triggers so that you can have it trigger from there. Sometimes it'll pop up as just be like a location, and you have the option that you can kind of play some background music, and it will play more than one sound at a time. When you set up your local audio, it only triggers one sound at a time, which kind of sucks, but that's just how the limitation of that. So anyhow, hopefully this helps a little bit. Like I said, at the end of this video, there are some resources in the links below in the description. And also don't forget about the Atlassian page, because that's actually pretty important if you're not sure how this all goes together. Kind of gave you some ideas of how it works, but I'll just kind of recap. So you have to go to your account. You have to get the authorization code from your dashboard. You have to plug that into Fantasy Grounds. And once it's in Fantasy Grounds, then you have to create an invite link and a campaign essentially for that sound to be pulled in. And then you're going to send the invite to your chat in Fantasy Grounds, and then your players will join that. So if I go back over to the sound settings under options, and then, or excuse me, not under options, but under sound context, and go to settings, I said you can generate this invite code, and that gives you the 2 links that your players will need when they want to join the audio part of your game. So this is part of the game here, or part of the setup in using the Syrinscape audio. So this hopefully will help you. So the $9, basically you're paying for somebody to set up all those links for you. That's all you're paying for. You're not paying for the actual sound. You're not paying for the module. You're paying just for the triggers between the module and the sound. They're completely separate. So when you buy the core book, you also have to buy this sound link thing if you don't want to set them up yourself. And you have to have a Super Sirens subscription in order for those links to work. So just keep that in mind. So just because you buy the sound set, which is actually just links, that does not mean you have the actual sounds. You have to actually have a subscription. The sounds are hosted on the website, not in Fantasy Grounds, not on your computer, but on the website. The only thing you're getting there is the actual links. That's why it's called Sound Link Packs. It's not the actual audio. The audio is stored on the website. If you have the older player, the online or the local player where you play everything manually on your computer, which is this older thing here, this will not work with the sound links unless you set them up yourself. They have to be remapped. So if that's you, if you already have Pathfinder sound packs and you already have it set up, I would just leave it that way. I wouldn't change unless you're going to start a whole new campaign and you want to redo everything, because that is done separately. And I believe you can still use Matacure's sound links to trigger these manually on your localized player. So that's one advantage of using Matacure's sound links, is it still works with the older online web player, or this is a localized player. So that's the difference between those two setups. So if you already have it set up and you're in the middle of a campaign, I wouldn't change it. I would just wait till you're done with the campaign and then start over, or just continue with the way you're doing. And like I said, if you can't wait for some of the other sound packs to come out, because it's going to take a while, you can build your own and just use the core as an example in Fantasy Grounds, so you can kind of get an idea of how these are set up. So that's just a tip or something that you can do. But you have to make sure that you have the core book loaded. You have to have the Pathfinder module with the sound sets, and then you want to trigger them. And these will be mostly off your characters. So when your characters are in the combat tracker, and you're fighting and such, that'll trigger some of these sounds depending on what they do and what they are. So you have damage types, you have spells, and then you have some other triggers in there like death triggers and stuff. So if it's a creature and it has special abilities and such, you're not going to get the sounds for that if there are any. You'll have to wait until the adventures come out, or until the creature catalog or that manual comes out for Pathfinder 2. I forget what it's called, but it's like a bestiary. So when the bestiary comes out, you'll get all the sounds for the monsters and stuff. But for now, you're getting mostly just character facing stuff and some of the death triggers and stuff, and then damage types. So just keep that in mind, what you're getting, and kind of know what you're getting before you buy this. So I'll go back to the webpage one more time. So you're getting the attack triggers, you're getting damage triggers, death triggers, and spells. That's it. Everything else you have to do yourself, or you have to wait until they do their own packs or versions. So that's what you're paying for this $9.99, is for somebody to spend the hours to link all that together. If you don't like to pay another subscription and you don't think this is right, you can always set up your own thing. You don't have to use any of this. So that's a whole nother situation. But if you're going to do that, there is a tutorial for a localized sound on the Atlassian. So anyways, hopefully that's helpful. I don't do too many Pathfinder 2 videos, but it's kind of a universal thing. I think it's pretty close to the same thing regardless of what rule set you use. And some of the requirements and the limitations are the same throughout so all the different rule sets. So anyways, hopefully this is helpful to you guys. If not, well, leave me a comment, or if it is, leave me a comment. I don't care, or I don't mind. I'm just kind of trying to help people out. So take care, everyone.